Here my opponent tries to escape head control by turning his body, pulling his head back, and shrugging his shoulder into my elbow. Instead of trying to maintain my grip, I cup my hand under his chin and extend my hands into his face. It's important to note that I am using the energy of my opponent's turn to my advantage. As he rotates his shoulders to free his head, I drive his face in the direction of his turn. This forces his head back and creates an opening to attack with a knee. As a general rule of thumb, I always like to throw the knee in the direction my opponent is turning. For instance, if he is turning his body towards his left, then you are going to throw a right knee. With his posture upright, his hands tied up, and his hips and shoulders rotated, his midsection is totally exposed. To capitalize on his vulnerable positioning, drive your knee right into his solar plexus. In order to escape head control, my opponent first has to create distance between our bodies. In this particular case, he attempts this task by maneuvering his arm underneath my collar tie and across my face. Once accomplished, he extends his arm into my face and drives my head back, a technique commonly referred to as the CROSSFACE. Before he can escape the position, I reposition my collar tie to the opposite side of his head, latch onto his bicep with my free hand, and throw a knee to his midsection. It's important to notice how I move my upper body in the direction that my opponent is pushing. Remember, you always want to take the path of least resistance. If your opponent has his left hand positioned to the left side of your face and is driving your head towards your right, then you are going to move your left hand to the left side of his head while tilting your body towards your right side, in the same direction he is pushing. As you lean your body to the side, pull his head down using your reverse collar tie and throw a knee to his abdomen. When executing this step, it's also important that you control your opponent's crossface arm by latching onto his biceps. This will prevent him from dropping his guard and using his arm to block the knee. This is another effective technique that can be used to counter the crossface escape. As you already know, your opponent's goal is to create separation between your bodies so that he can escape his head. To prevent him from accomplishing this, circle around to the side of your opponent's body while pulling his head in the direction of your turn. When timed correctly, he will be forced to counterbalance his weight with a couple of steps. As he moves to correct his stance, drive a knee into his stomach. It's important to note that you can pull him in either direction. If he has his right arm positioned on the right side of his head, then you can use his energy against him by pulling him towards your right side, or you can capitalize on his trapped arm by pulling him toward your left. The most important thing with this technique is to execute the off-balancing maneuver before your opponent extends his arms into your face. If you stammer for a split second and allow him to extend his arm into your face, then this technique will not work. To prevent you from landing with hard knee strikes, a lot of guys will place their hands on your hips and straighten their arms. With their arms extended, it is difficult to thrust your hips forward and close the distance to land with a knee. When faced with this scenario, release your grip on your opponent's head, slide one arm to the inside of your opponent's arm, and then swing your arm to the ceiling while circling around to his back. Circling around to your opponent's back as you elevate your arm is mandatory. If you lag, or separate the step into two movements, then your opponent will wrap his arm over your underhook arm and cinch down with his overhook to neutralize your counter. Once you circle around to his back, you can immediately get your offense going with an attack.